This is episode number 30 of Hitting for the Cycle, and the calendar has changed from April to May. That's Ben Kruse. I'm Ryan Touhey. And Ben, how are you doing?
I'm good. It's Thursday. We're back to our regular, recording day. It's been a decent week. The weather's been obviously a lot better, so can't really complain. How are you doing?
Doing fine myself. I can't necessarily complain too much either. And as you said, the weather's definitely been nicer in recent days, and hopefully it stays that way, and we can enjoy another nice spring and another nice summer as the baseball season progresses. And before we get into the stories for today, we just want to remind everybody to follow Hitting for the Cycle on Facebook, X, and Instagram at HFTC Follow the Empty the Bench Podcast Network at ETB Network. Follow our YouTube channel at youtube.com/ETB Network. And finally, listen to us wherever you get your podcasts.
Yep, and this episode is presented to you guys by Playback. Watching sports is more fun with others, but we spend too much time of our time watching alone. Playback is a virtual space where communities can stream live sports together with everyone perfectly synced up. Creators can hop on stage, deliver their own play-by-play analysis and commentary, and invite viewers for Q&A. Playback makes watching sports fully interactive and a social experience. From playing fantasy sports, repping your favorite players and teams, and watching with commentators and communities you care about. Win or lose, sports are best enjoyed together. Join our community by going to playback.tv/ETB Network to find out more, including our live stream schedule. Obviously, with the NBA playoffs, we are connected with NBA League Pass, so we essentially been doing a lot of games for the playoffs going on right now. So tune in for those. Make sure to follow us also on our Twitter page to get more about Playback, which we're sponsored by here on this show.
Well, the old saying, April showers bring May flowers, is not exactly true for the Angels. April showers has brought hell, basically, to the Angels, as the same two guys who have struggled with injuries over the past God knows how many years at this point are back on the injured list again. Mike Trout and Anthony Rendon. Let's start with Rendon, because this is just absolutely ridiculous at this point with this guy. And this guy is going to get no sympathy, nor should he get any sympathy from anybody. So Rendon, last week, Rendon's on the injured list now with a hamstring injury. He suffered a very high-grade partial tear in his left hamstring. This is what he told the reporters. He got it when he was running out an infield single against the Minnesota Twins. And add another injury to the list of this guy's injuries that he has had with the Angels. I'm sorry. This was against the Reds. I'm sorry. Rendon sustained the injury while beating out an infield single on Saturday. I think that was Saturday, the 27th of April against the Reds. And he underwent testing and received different opinions. And the extent is a high-grade partial tear in his left hamstring. So Rendon, as we all know, this is, I believe, year 4 or 5 in his 7-year contract that he signed with the Angels prior to the 2020 season for $245 million. He has yet to play in 60 games in a season with the Angels ever since he signed this contract. And with this injury, I highly doubt he's going to achieve that this year as well. And as I said, with Rendon, it's just a never-ending cycle with this guy. This guy gets hurt if he takes a walk down the street. It's absolutely ridiculous. I've seen a lot of injury-prone players in my lifetime as a Yankee fan. Don't get me wrong. There have been a lot of them. I mean, a lot of them have played for my team as well. But Rendon is kind of a special kind of fragile, if you ask me, both in personality and in athleticism. The guy just has shown little to no interest in giving it his all on the baseball field ever since he signed this contract. And it's frustrating, to say the least. He just does not seem just that emotionally moved by this at all. I mean, he said, what you're supposed to say to the reporters. It's frustrating, especially since I've been swinging a hot bat, which he was actually. He actually, after getting off to a miserable start this season, he was actually swinging the bat fairly decently leading up to the injury. I think he was like 24, like 54 or something like that. And he was getting a lot of hits. But, even though when he was swinging the bat better, I was thinking to myself, I wonder how much longer this is going to last before he goes down again. I was just counting it down. And when I saw this, I never want to see anybody get hurt. All right. But when this happens, I almost laughed, like, because this is just so comical at this point. Because this guy has no business making the kind of money he's making, and it's just you feel bad for Angel fans that their ownership undertook this commitment for this guy, and this guy is nowhere to be found year in and year out. And also make note, Anthony Rendon has a full no trade clause, so the Angels are stuck with this guy till the very end, and this is what he does every year. He came into spring training with this sourpuss attitude, saying baseball's never been a priority for me. I do this to make a living. Basically screw you, back off. And now he's going back on the injured list again. So yeah, even though I'm not an Angel fan, I'm part amused and also part infuriated because this guy is the epitome of what I don't like in a baseball player in terms of personality and on-field performance. I'll let you give your thoughts about this injury.
Yeah, we got obviously, like I said, I never wish injuries on anybody, no matter who it is, no matter what sport. Mike Trout, obviously, I feel for the guy so badly. This is really a player that, pretty much any type of fan just likes specifically. I don't think there's many teams that are like, oh, like, I can't stand this guy. Like, this is a guy specifically that just balls out year after year after year. But unfortunately, his injuries have been a massive part to potentially what could be from a great to potentially a league career. Because this guy specifically is that type of caliber player. It kind of reminds me of Ken Griffey Jr.'s overall career where, he's had really good stats consistently, but he just never can put it all together. And I don't know specifically if, like, it's just the Angels just, I want to say, cursed part of their team. People are like, well, if Mike Trout went somewhere else, would this keep on happening? I don't know. But regardless of the fact, it's just, I feel awful for the guy. I mean, I drafted him in fantasy for one of my teams for baseball this year, thinking, maybe we get a full-on revenge tour of Mike Trout. It looked great. It looked great to start the year. He was absolutely balling out. He was really playing to potentially I wouldn't say like old like Mike Trout, but like kind of throwback in a way. I'm like, oh, this is great. And of course, I read the news the other day from Alden Gonzalez, and I'm like, damn, man. I'm like, this sucks. And yeah, he might come back during the year, but you're like, well, one, when does he come back? And two, if he does come back, how's he going to be? Is it going to be like August, like late August, early September, where essentially they're probably going to be out of it? So it just sucks. I mean, it's pretty much their team now. I mean, Shohei Ohtani, obviously, the last couple years of the Angels, you can kind of at least be able to kind of like, all right, there's something there with the Angels, like, but he's their star now. He's their franchise star. And it's like he goes down, it's like, well, sorry, Angel fans. There's nothing really else you guys can really, watch, honestly. Rendon, he's yes, like I said, Rendon's kind of a guy which we talked about before the season, Ryan, remember, about Rendon and saying that he, about some 9-to-5 job or whatever, something like that in terms of his overall priorities are a little bit different than maybe some other guys. And I'm like, listen, I get it, man. But now it's almost like he's trying to take some of the time from his injuries that he's had in the past to, like, just being like on the side. Like, if he's hurt, he's hurt, right? Like I said, I've not been in his shoes, so like I'm obviously not going to tell him, whatever he got. But it's crazy with this guy. Like you said, he could, go down, just walking down the street, and I would probably believe you, because I just don't know with this guy specifically. It's every single year now. And when I saw this specifically, I wasn't more in like a laughter shock type of shock really. I was just more in like I'm not shocked at all. Like, it's like this guy does this every single year. And it sucks, right? Like I said, I don't want to wish injuries on anybody. Um, but these two guys, man, Rendon used to be a really, really good player. Um, with the Nationals, and I just don't know what happened with the Angels. Just he came in and just totally. I mean, I saw him play against the Red Sox twice in April, and in Anaheim he was on the 0 for streak going on the 0 for hitting streak, and he got a couple hits in that one, and then actually did okay. I'm at Fenway. I'm just like, all right, this guy, of course, now turned into Barry Bonds when he faced our pitching staff. I'm like, this is odd. And then he kind of goes down, back to the inconsistencies. But he just, yeah, I mean, he used to be, I think, one of the best third basemen in baseball. Now it's almost like you're just hoping that he can get on the field and just at least give you some quality at bats. Because really, production-wise, I can't bank anything on him. So, in summarization, it sucks for Angel fans. I'm one of my co-hosts, James from other show. James, I'm sorry, man. I really, really feel for you. I really feel it for Angel fans because they, like my Red Sox specifically, and Ryan, obviously, your team going through some injuries. Like this team, man, one thing kind of goes down, like the Red Sox last year, and the shit hits the fan. I mean, there's no coming back, like, really back for this Angels team. They have, I think the best hitter now is probably like Taylor Ward. I mean, who's not a bad player, by all means, but it's just like, these two guys goes down. That's pretty much that. So that's tough for the Angels. But yeah, it sucks.
Yeah, Trout is going to be missing time with a torn meniscus. He suffered it on Monday in a game against the Phillies. And, as you said with Trout, there's a major difference in the personalities between Trout and Rendon. It's like night and day. Trout, has genuine love and enthusiasm for the game, and he wants to play every day. And he has an appreciation for the game as well. Rendon, I never really got that vibe from Rendon based on his demeanor in interviews, and just reading about him in general. So, yeah, and like you said, losing Ohtani obviously not only hurt the Angels in terms of performance on the field, but in terms of ticket sales and in terms of fans, going to the games. So, Trout was, kind of was there in a way to kind of, fill that gap, fill the void that was left after Ohtani, signed with the Dodgers. But now Trout is gone, and now what do you go to an Angels game for now? What's there to see? You're basically watching a AAA team.
Yeah, I think I saw some of the game yesterday when I got back from work, and just there was like nobody in the stands. I'm like, this is just it's awful, man. It really, really is. I think obviously the Oakland A's, obviously they have a really tough situation over there. But we'll talk about the A's in a little bit too down the stretch because there's one guy that's been really turning headlines around baseball. So we'll talk about the A's. But yeah, the Angels, man, they're in a tough stretch now. They're going to be in a really, really tough stretch.
Yep, the term "fallen angels" is definitely true when it comes to this team. There's not a lot of hope or optimism for the rest of this season. Like you mentioned, Trout is expected to come back at some point this year, but I'm not a doctor or anything. If I had to guess, it would probably have to be sometime during the summer, maybe July or something like that at the earliest, maybe. And Rendon, God knows if you'll ever see this guy again. So,
like all jokes aside, we really just don't know when he's going to be coming back.
yeah.
Because guarantee with him, he comes back and within that next couple of days, another setback. I can pretty much put a bet or something on that for that to happen. Yeah.
And let me just say one more time for the record, I don't wish injuries on anybody. Yes, I have harsh words. Yes, I have harsh words for Rendon. I don't want to see him get hurt, but based on the way that he's been and how little he's played, I can't help but just poke fun at it in a way as well. So that's why I have some harsh words for Rendon. So yeah, that's that. The Angels, it looks like it's going to be another long, torturous year for them, unfortunately. So we'll see if either of these guys come back anytime soon. Like I said, Trout should come back at some point, and Rendon, I don't know really. So now we'll move on to kind of one of the weirdest brawls I think you'll see in recent memory. So the Rays and the Brewers got into a bench clearing brawl on Tuesday night, and this was just completely strange. So basically, what happened was Freddie Peralta was on the mound, and he gave up a home run to Jose Siri in the top of the third inning. The Brewers were up 3-0, and Siri, when he hit the home run, kind of dropped his bat, looked down, casually took a few steps to first base, and then proceeded to round the bases. Now, I'm not sure exactly if Peralta took exception to that or whatnot. I mean, bat flipping and showboating is a lot more common nowadays, and it's tolerated a lot more now compared to the old days. But when Siri came up in his next at bat, which I believe was the fifth or the sixth inning, the Brewers had increased their lead. I think it was like 6-1 or something like that, if I'm not mistaken. But regardless, Peralta missed with the first three pitches to Siri and then proceeded to hit him in the hip, the back hip area. And the umpire, the home plate umpire and crew chief of the umpiring staff, Chris Guccione, called the other umpires in for a little meeting, and they proceeded to kick Peralta out, which obviously drew the ire of the Brewers manager. I keep blanking on his name off the top of my head. Miller, I think his name is.
Yeah. Hold on a sec.
I think it's Miller, if I'm not mistaken. I could be wrong.
Pat Murphy.
Oh, Murphy. I'm sorry. I knew it began with an M. But he came out to Guccione, and he had some harsh words for Guccione. Guccione had some harsh words for him too. Guccione was giving it right back to him, getting in his face, and there were a lot of F-bombs. This is all on breakdown on John Boy Media too, if you guys want to try and get a firsthand look at what was going on. But yeah, I mean, Murphy couldn't catch a break with some of the calls that were going against the Brewers. On Sunday, there was a call that went against the Brewers away in a game against the Yankees where Aaron Judge put his hand up, breaking up a double play that led to a large rally for the Yankees. And then the following evening, Murphy had gotten into it with the umpires. I think they had missed a call or something like that. And
it was a strike three that Bauer swung at. That was gonna be a pass ball for them to tie the game.
Yes, you're right.
But they I don't know if they stopped the play dead or something after he swung, but it was almost like specifically they didn't count the continuation after he swung and missed. So essentially it was a strikeout, but the guy essentially from third couldn't advance to tie the game. It was really, really odd.
Yeah, so he had those two calls on Sunday and Monday that he had to put up with, and now he had to put up with this. And Murphy, understandably so, was irate. He got right into it with Guccione. Guccione got right back in Murphy's face, and Murphy was eventually kicked out of the game. So then a couple of innings later, I think Urias, I believe his name is, for the Brewers, was on the mound. I think that's what his name was. I'm just double checking, making sure, because I'm not too familiar with the Brewers. So yeah, we go then to the top of the eighth inning, and Siri is up at the plate again, and he hits just a weak chopper to first base to Rhys Hoskins, and Hoskins eventually just flips the ball over to the pitcher, and I'm still trying to find this guy's name. Pitcher was Abner Uribe. It was Uribe. I got the first letter of the last name right. I just can't get the last name right in general. So it's Abner Uribe who threw that pitch in the eighth inning to Jose Siri, and Siri grounded out to first. So when Siri got to first base, he kind of glowered at Uribe in a way, and then Uribe kind of looked back at Siri, and I don't know what was said, but the two of them started going at it. Rhys Hoskins got in the middle of it, and he eventually went down, which was kind of a frightening sight to see, considering that he had an ACL injury last year. So that was a little horrifying. Benches eventually cleared, and it was just so bizarre, like I mentioned, and so out of the blue. And it's just weird because the Rays and the Brewers rarely ever play each other. They only play each other 3 times a year. And, you know, I don't know exactly if it was all about Peralta plunking Siri in the sixth inning or something like that. But, you know, Peralta was tossed out of the game, and this was what Siri had to say on the bench clearing brawl. He said, "When I went to first base, I just went there normal, and he kind of hit me on the shoulder. And I asked him, why'd he do that? And he just said, because I felt like it. And from right there, nothing was said." That's all it took. And by the way, the punches were horribly thrown. These were not good punches. I mean, no one wants to throw a punch to begin with.
Yeah.
No one wants to break their hand, so I understand that.
Mm.
But like, that's it. That's my reaction. That was it. That's what caused this brawl. I mean, the guy who threw the pitch Peralta was already gone. So, this was such a waste of time, if you asked me. And now we got some suspensions ongoing right now. So the suspensions that were handed out here. So Uribe has received a 6-game suspension, with Peralta getting 5, and Murphy has a 2-game suspension. So I'm sure that Murphy's also going to have some words for the league office. And and Siri was suspended 3 games. So it's so Uribe and Peralta, the 2 Brewer pitchers, are both suspended for 6. Oh no, Uribe's 6 games, Peralta's 5 games, Murphy's 2 games, and Siri gets 3. So it's 3 Brewers who are suspended, and 1 Ray is suspended. So it's just a weird scenario. Baseball brawls can be weird in general at times. Sometimes they just come out of nowhere, and this was just absolutely stupid, if you asked me. In my opinion, there was really no need for this. And now, the Brewers are going to be without 2 of their best pitchers, and the Rays are going to be without Siri for a little bit. Like, I don't know. I mean, this was just ridiculous, if you ask me.
Yeah, I didn't really watch it. I mean, I just saw some images when you were talking. I'm a little surprised about Peralta getting 5, though, because he theoretically, yes, he obviously got ejected, but he hit the guy, right? And then he essentially wasn't a part of the brawl. So why would he get more of the benefit of 5 games if he theoretically was not the person that was exchanging specifically before?
That is a good point. He wasn't part of the brawl.
Yeah, so he was getting penalized essentially for not even being part. Is it just me, or doesn't add up? Because he essentially, yes, I get it. He probably get maybe two or 3. I'm fine with that. 5, that's a little steep. Now, especially if he's not going to be the one that is exchanging. Uribe's just like, oh, I felt like it. That's not coming from Peralta, right? Uribe is getting 6. Yeah, because he was the one that essentially was causing it for throwing the guy, and then he essentially was retaliating. Peralta, on the other hand, is just like, all right, I got ejected. That's what it is. I'm not pitching the rest of the game. He looks like he took it off finally, even though he probably wasn't, happy about it. But when we were talking about that, I'm like, that just, I don't know. So, like you said, it was already bizarre already as is. But Peralta is essentially the best pitcher. So it's only going to be 1 start. I mean, obviously, I'm not going to be going haywire about it. But if I was somebody that was in the league office, I would probably give Peralta 2 to 3 games. 5 games, I think, is a little steep for essentially just he was not even being part of the actual brawl itself. He essentially was just being part of, and you were talking about with Siri obviously doing the drop flip after the home run. It kind of reminds me of last year with the Rangers-Astros when Adolis Garcia hit the home run against Framber Valdez. And essentially when Garcia was going around second, Valdez and him kind of looked at each other. And I don't think there was a brawl after, but it was almost just kind of like the same situation. And when in terms of the brawl itself, there wasn't physical any punches. Well, yeah, nobody wants to get hurt because of a freaking brawl. So like you said, it's absolutely bizarre. I didn't really get the chance to watch it, but the whole entire series is bizarre. Between the actual, I guess you want to call it brawl, and then obviously the other. I don't know if it's the same game where Bowers obviously swung and missed, but who would have thought, Ryan, that Rays and Brewers would have some tension?
And I mean, both teams have already gotten into bench clearing incidents earlier this year. I mean, the Brewers had that ridiculous incident at the beginning of the season with Jeff McNeil and the Mets, and the Rays had gotten into it with the Blue Jays earlier this year. That was also over the first weekend of the regular season. Yeah, it's also weird. You're throwing Peralta out of the game after he's behind in the count 3-0, and he threw at Series hip. Now, I'm not saying that wasn't intentional. I'm not saying that it was not intentional as well. I don't know. But, when I was watching the video, Murphy was mouthing to Guccione, "You don't know my guy. You don't know," meaning Peralta, "You don't know what he's trying to do out there. How do you know that was on purpose?" Which I can understand that, he's sticking up for his guy, and he doesn't know at the end of the day whether or not this was intentional. But Guccione felt that it was in the best interest of the game to kick Peralta out of there. That's a judgment call, basically. I think nowadays when it comes to, ejections and warnings, I feel that they are on most occasions handled rather poorly nowadays. I feel that umpires are too quick to pull the trigger and eject somebody. And this doesn't go for just baseball. I feel like this is just around sports now in general. I think nowadays people get the hook much more easily than in years past. In years past, there was a lot more, warnings or leniency in terms of, brawls or, fights or whatever. But, it is what it is. The whole thing was just weird. Maybe, Siri getting into it with Uribe was also maybe a part of frustration on the Rays' behalf because they've been playing poorly as of late. I mean, they just got swept by the god-awful White Sox this weekend, and we're getting beaten again by the Brewers, so there may be some frustration on the Rays' end.
Mm-hmm.
So maybe they just had maybe they just had to let off some steam in this brawl in a way. I don't know. But yeah, the whole thing was just weird, and 4 guys suspended and fined. So yeah, that was that weird incident there. And now we're gonna go on to a weird topic in general. Major League Baseball is planning on fixing these uniforms by next year at the very latest. So, Major League Baseball came into this season with a big story hovering over their heads with criticism over the new Nike uniforms that were going to be used for this season. So the uniforms got a lot of heat last year for the ads that they've been implementing a couple of years ago, ever since they signed this deal with Nike. So the uniforms were criticized for having the Nike swoosh on the front of their jerseys. Then they were criticized for allowing advertising patches on them. So now, this year, they're being criticized for just how they look and how badly they are absorbing sweat. Yeah. You look at these uniforms around the league. The lettering on the back of the jerseys is so freaking minuscule. It's egregious on your Red Sox, by the way. It looks absolutely stupid. No offense. It's so small that the lettering, the last names on the back, I can't read it. I can't read it. And the lettering is a big problem. It's not just the Red Sox. The Mets also have very small lettering. The Angels. It's around the league. And on top of that, the biggest problem, though, is the sweat. I mean, I'm watching these guys sweat through these jerseys. It's absolutely nasty. Carlos Rodon looked like he went swimming.
Yeah, against the Astros. Yeah, I'm just like, yeah, that should not happen playing baseball. I don't care who you are. Even if specifically you have like an undershirt specifically and you're still sweating that much. Listen, Ron, they should have never had any of these things in the first hand. I think they're really trying to do it as a money grab, pretty much at the end of the day. I mean, there's no other explanation for it. So thank God. I'm very, very thankful for it because they were fine as was before they changed it up. So thankfully that Manfred actually did something right for once and decided to. I don't know if it was his call, but thankfully, because I can't stand seeing this anymore. Especially with like some of the jerseys, right there, like the throwback jerseys. You remember, like the Mets, they're gray and the bridge cap and stuff like that with like little small letters. It's just like it's already bad as is, but then you want to change some of the jerseys and stuff like that, like the Phillies. There's some specific different throwback ones. Obviously, the Red Sox ones, the yellow jerseys are the Marathon specifically. I know there's a lot of people that don't like them, that are Red Sox fans, which I understand. But yeah, you take already the bad font with a lot of these teams, but then you take away some of the bad jersey looks as well. It just makes it all a mess. So yeah, I think specifically this was badly needed. And just keep it that way. Do not change it.
The fact that this even happened is unacceptable in the first place. This should not have happened. You've been making jerseys for God knows how many years now, and this is what you come up with. It's like having a piece of paper. It's like having a wet piece of paper out there. It just gets destroyed. Meaning the jerseys. It's amazing just how bad they are. People and MLB was like raving. In the off season, I was seeing headlines how they were excited to break out these new uniforms. Da da da. And then you see all these guys sweating through them. It's almost like something out of a comedy show. It looks absolutely ridiculous. So, hopefully to God they get this situation resolved before next year, because I don't know if I can stand another day watching Carlos Rodon sweat through his jersey. I'm afraid it's going to pop off, or he's going to get a hole in it. Like it's just going to like shrink or whatever on him, because, oh my God, this is disgusting to watch. Get a lot of guys on the Yankees sweat. So it's been nasty to watch. And yeah, hopefully.
Well, if you're a power pitcher specifically, you're using already so much torque already like on like your elbow, but then it's just like your overall body, like everything specifically is just sweat and sweat and sweat. And the longer you go, it's just like, yeah, it's just like, what are you supposed to do? So yeah, like you said, it's absolutely gross. Those jerseys just can't last specifically. Just get them out of there. That's all we got to say.
Yeah, Nike had signed that lucrative deal with Major League Baseball back in 2019. It was a 10-year deal that they signed. So, we're about halfway through the deal. But beforehand, Major League Baseball was always with Majestic. Well, had been with Majestic since 1982, and Majestic always did a great job. I would never really understood why they switched brands in the first place. I guess they, like you said, at the end of the day, it's probably a money. It's all about money. So they said goodbye to Majestic and they went to Nike, and Nike has come under criticism with some of these uniforms that they've implemented. So. Nike's Nike's the worldwide leader in sports merchandise. So, what? Time to step your game up, Nike. We can't have this. And, hopefully to God they fix this soon. So that's that. And now we're going to move on to another bizarre incident that took place this week at a baseball game. There was a bee invasion in Arizona on Tuesday prior to the Diamondbacks-Dodgers game. This bee invasion took place behind home plate, or I think around the netting area, if I'm not mistaken. There was a humongous bee hive, and they had to delay the game for about 2 hours. The Diamondbacks actually were scheduled to have Jordan Montgomery pitch. Montgomery actually ended up getting scratched because too much time had passed. So they pushed Montgomery.
Well, essentially on Twitter, Ryan, they said his injury was beast. Beastie or something like that. And it sucks for him, but like I don't know if you've ever seen a pitcher get scratched because of the bee sting. I don't think it's ever happened. I'd be shocked if that ever happened.
I've seen videos of bees interrupting spring training games, like in Arizona and in Florida. There's one video that I remember seeing where there was a swarm of bees in a Cactus League game with the Padres, and I forget who else was playing. But regardless, there were bees all over the place, and literally everybody hit the deck. Everybody, from the umpires to the pitcher to the fielders, everybody got down on their stomach and waited for the bees to fly away. So, this is not something you see on an everyday basis in the major leagues, but in Arizona, it seems to be more frequently, understandably so, because of the climate there. But yeah, the game was delayed for about 2 hours, and it happened just before they were about to start first pitch, about 5 minutes prior. So then they had to get a bee exterminator to come to the ballpark and take care of this. He eventually took care of it, and then as a reward, he got to throw out the first pitch. So, very nice moment there. And yeah, another weird thing that you don't necessarily see at the ballpark every day. And you're just glad nobody got stung, and you're glad nobody got, I mean, bees are no joke. So, I'm glad that they got it out of there relatively easily and quickly. But yeah, kind of a bizarre moment in the desert.
It's been
Don't
a
really know.
episode of bizarreness, and this obviously just kind of adds on. Yeah, I didn't get to watch really into the game, but found on Twitter that Jordan Montgomery had a bee stun scratch start that he had to miss. So I'm like, all right, something's already bizarre already as is with that. So I took a look more about it, and yeah, like you said, the game was delayed a couple hours. They had to burn somebody come in. And good for the Diamondbacks. Good for the Diamondbacks to essentially be like, all right, if this game's going to be scratched for a couple hours, at least have the guy specifically that was able to come in and get all this mess out of the way. To throw the first pitch, I would do the exact same thing. So congratulations to the Diamondbacks. They're essentially my team of the week this week, no matter how they played. Yeah, they got absolutely demolished yesterday for the Dodgers, but that's another story for another day. But yeah, that's obviously, like you said, bizarre.
Yeah.
Yeah, if especially with it being a couple hours, if it was a couple minutes, fine. Couple hours. I mean, rain delays really are one thing specifically that people understand about. A bee situation for a couple hours, that's not fun.
No, not at all. And the bee wrangler's name was Matt Hilton, and he was actually summoned to Chase Field while he was at his son's own baseball game somewhere else. So imagine, I can only imagine how interesting that was when I got to see how to notify his wife or whoever else, saying, "Honey, I need you to pick up so and so up from the game. I have to go to Chase Field because I got to get rid of some bees," or something like that. Can only imagine what he was feeling in that moment. But yeah, he got rid of the bees, threw out the first pitch, received MVP chants from the fans. So that will probably go down as one of, if not the highlight of his bee career. So good for Mr. Hilton. And yeah, I hope he enjoyed the game. I hope they allowed him to watch the game for free after that.
I hope so.
Yeah. You made him leave his own son's baseball game for this. So
Yeah.
I hope they treated him good. And now we're going to get to a team that I actually want to talk about. So the Minnesota Twins. Are they back, and are they for real? Are they pretenders or contenders? So the Twins got off to a pretty bad start this year. I'm just pulling up their records so far. So the Twins right now like I mentioned, they've won 10 in a row and 11 of their last 12. And currently on the season, they are sitting at 17-13 and are in fourth place in what is a surprisingly tight, well, maybe not surprisingly tight, but a surprisingly competitive American League Central. American League Central has gotten a lot of heat over the past couple of seasons for how non-competitive it has been and how poorly the caliber of the teams are there. But the first four teams in the American League Central: Cleveland, Kansas City, Detroit, and Minnesota, all have winning records. I mean, the only team with a losing record are the god-awful White Sox with the worst record overall in Major League Baseball. But the Twins, are coming off a 3-game sweep of the Chicago White Sox. And that was also followed by a 3-game sweep of the Los Angeles Angels. And they had also swept the White Sox 4 straight just last week. So, they've swept the White Sox and the Angels. So the two teams that they've beaten are not necessarily the best caliber teams in baseball. They're two of the worst teams in baseball. Mm-hmm. But having said that, the Twins still, those are 10 wins that you can't take away from them. So, I guess this begs to the question, how legitimate are the Twins? Their pitching for the most part has been, pretty solid. And their offense, has picked it up. But, if you're asking me, I don't really know how. I'm kind of not buying this. I kind of find the Twins to be more pretenders than contenders, if you ask me. And that's just because of the caliber of the teams that they beat up. I think beating up the White Sox and the Angels, while it's what you're supposed to do, I don't necessarily know if that's going to be, it's not, you're not facing good teams. And I don't know if that's necessarily the determining factor of, of who you are as a ball club in general. So, I mean, I think I'm saying they're more pretenders than contenders, but you have any thoughts about the Twins?
Yeah, I don't follow them specifically, massively because I don't really care. But I did see specifically that they've been starting kind of turn up a little bit as of late. Yeah, like you said, the Angels probably down with Trout and Rendon. And then with the White Sox, I mean, the White Sox specific, I think their team average is under 200. They beat the Rays this past weekend. Getting Tommy Pham, I guess, is maybe give them a little bit of a jolt, but still, I mean, that team specific is an absolute disarray. Their starting pitching is an absolute mess. They're essentially been talking about rotation changes. In terms of the Twins, Ryan, too, I don't know if you saw that Byron Buxton got hurt yesterday.
Yes, I saw that. Another guy who can't stay healthy to save his
life. So, yeah, I mean, obviously they've been playing a lot better. But, for instance, if Byron Buxton goes down, I mean, it's not going to be able to last because he's one of your best players. And, yeah, I think it's more a fool's gold than anything. I mean, like I said, if they keep on doing this, sure, go, that's awesome. Good for them. Like I said, I really don't care about them. However, the Red Sox play them this weekend in Minnesota, so I hope the Red Sox put them into a little reality check because, and we'll talk about our teams in a little bit, but the Red Sox pitching has been not too shabby so far. So, hopefully the Twins winning streak kind of falls off a little bit when we face them this weekend.
I do think it's going to end this weekend, this winning streak, but this winning streak of 10, it's the longest in team history since 2008 when they also won 10 in a row. So, the Twins right now are on fire. We'll see if they can carry that momentum into this weekend when they play your Red Sox. But, yeah, I mean, the Twins are doing what they're supposed to do, which is beating up on the bad teams. And now they've put themselves back in the American League Central hunt. And like I said, it's pretty tight between those top four teams in the division. Everybody besides the White Sox has gone off to a fairly good start in that division. Cleveland, obviously, as we touched upon a couple of episodes ago, I think it was last week, if I'm not mistaken, they had the best overall record in Major League Baseball. So,
they're playing well still. They're still playing really well. They're not like a power type offense, but they're just a grind it out. They got some guys that can just put the ball in play. And Stephen Vogt, I gotta give his flowers. I mean, early, like I said, the season's still kind of on the earlier side than ever, but. Bieber obviously goes down. Their pitching's still been all right. I mean, McKenzie pitched well yesterday. Carrasco obviously is giving them a little bit here and there. So, yeah, the Guardians really, I mean, the Royals, I feel like specifically kind of been up and down. The Tigers, same thing. The Guardians have been a team that's really, really kind of impressed me in a way. I mean, they beat both of us in the series when we faced them 2 or 3 times, both times. J-Rom, obviously, Naylor. Like, they have some guys there offensively, but they're a pesky team. They're like what the Rays should be like this year.
Yeah, the Guards are currently in Houston right now, taking on the Astros. They won in extras yesterday, won by a score of 3-2. Stephen Kwan put on a show yesterday. And, they're still leading the charge in that Central Division, and they are showing that they are a pretty legit team. Once May and June start to roll around, you kind of get a sense of who these teams truly are, and they start playing more consistently to their potential, to their maximum potential. And then obviously as the dog days of summer goes, they eventually hit a little adversity here and there. This goes for most teams. You hit a little adversity, you go through a little struggles, the wear and tear of the season begins to take a toll on you. And then you got to overcome those obstacles, and eventually that leads to the final stretch in September and October. So we're going to start to see teams starting to separate from the pack a little bit, start to build up some leads in the division. We're going to start to see some teams fall off. And we'll see if the Twins are going to be one of them, or if the Guards are going to be another, or whoever else in the Central. Because 4 teams are not going to make the play. 4 teams in one division are not going to make the playoffs. So we're going to see who in that Central division is going to rise and who's going to fall eventually. So actually, I know you briefly mentioned this earlier in the episode. We don't have a topic bar for this, but another team I think that deserves to get a little bit of recognition is the Oakland Athletics. The Oakland A's, the team that's going to be moving to Sacramento next year for a couple of years, and a team that's hoping to move to Vegas by 2028. The A's are actually not a total embarrassment so far this year. They've actually played some fairly decent baseball. I mean, they split. I mean, my team, we played them last week, and we could only muster a split with them. Mm-hmm. So, that wasn't necessarily fun to watch as a Yankee fan. But then they went to Baltimore and took 2 out of 3. Yeah. So, that kind of, when they took 2 out of 3 from Baltimore, I thought to myself, maybe these guys got some fire. And honestly, they kind of do. I mean, they're only 2 games under 500. So, they actually could get themselves, back in the mix here a little bit. I ignore my phone for a sec right there. I apologize for that. But actually, you know what? Why don't you just briefly talk about the A's right here? I'll put myself on mute.
Okay. Yeah, the Oakland A's, I think really have been a fun story this year. I think it's really been because of their bullpen. Their bullpen, when they have been able to get some leads, like between the 5th and the 7th inning, they have some guys in that back end that have been dominant. But essentially anybody has been more dominant than Mason Miller, who's been their closer, who I think right now is turning heads in terms of just this guy, Ryan, I believe is a negative whip, which is absolutely disgusting. I mean, this guy essentially is throwing 100 miles an hour consistently, fastball-wise, and then he's giving you like a 78 to 80 mile an hour slider. So within like a 10 to 15 mile an hour difference between your fastball and between your off-speed pitches. I mean, hitters essentially are just guessing against this guy. My only hope, though, is with the guy like this is just I hope he stays healthy. Because if you're essentially using that specifically amount on your arm torque, throwing that hard that much, I just worry that it's going to eventually, come to bite him throughout, the rest of the season, because we're only in the second month of the season. I mean, this guy specifically is doing this. It's great, right? I love to see it, but, if one turn or one type of pitch happens, it happens. Obviously, I hope it doesn't happen, but I also wouldn't be shocked also, too, because it's just like this guy is just throwing 100 mile an hour consistently. And as great as it is, which it has been, it's like, man, it's just like, ooh, you probably could still be fine throwing 96 to 98 and probably be still fine getting away with that. But this guy's just flamethrower. So that's been one of the reasons why the A's have been doing good, because their bullpen's been absolutely great. But they got some offense too. I mean, Tyler Nevin, who I don't think anybody really knows about, and that's fine. He's been really hitting well lately. J.J. Bleday, Brent Rooker obviously was an all-star last year. He was like one of their all-stars. He's been doing okay, not great. But yeah, they're a team that's been, obviously the Pirates. They took 2 out of 3 from the Pirates. They obviously had like the really good start kind of like last year, and they're kind of falling like, we expected them. But the Baltimore series, I mean, going to Baltimore and taking 2 out of 3, and not only the wins that they had, Ryan, they came back in both games in the top of the 9th inning, which tells a lot. They had, I think both games specifically in the top of the 9th, they hit it off of Craig Kimbrell, and they both were home runs. So, I mean, that speaks a lot, especially, with a decent crowd over at Camden, and they just took it from them. Good for them. Because, like I said, they have really no expectations this year. But I think for A's fans specifically, if they at least can give you some quality baseball, if anything, I don't even think that they're looking at playoffs and obviously, any of that type of stuff. But for a team specifically that has been clamoring at ownership and all that type of stuff, which still is an absolute mess, if they can at least give you like competent baseball, I think that's pretty much a win for them. And so essentially, and I told my buddy who's an A's fan, Mother show. Shout out to you, Isaiah, who works at the Coliseum. He actually worked there the other day, I believe, against the Pirates. And he texted me and he said, "We might not be as bad as we might thought." I'm like, I told him, and I said, it can't be any worse than last year. And and if it is, I'll be shocked, because I think specifically, even if some teams aren't great, they typically have a hard time of going either up or forward. That's baseball specific. You have a different type of roster year in, year out. And if you bring like a guy like a Mason Miller in, like just a stud that I think people can turn their eyes about, not only just has confidence in him, but confidence in the team. Is just like, all right, we got a couple runs early on, and have decent pitching. Ross Stripling, like Alex Wood. They got some pitchers now. Last year was all just like, all right, we'll just put a scraps to the wall and just hope it works out. That was really the A's last year. But they got some guys specifically in the rotation. They're like, all right, they've kind of been around the block. And then you could put a guy like Mason Miller in that back end. It's like, great. So these aren't – they're not a great team by all means. But they're not like the pushover A's that we remember from last year and the last couple of years. They're a team that's going to give you fight if you're not playing well on your A day.
No, yeah. And, I obviously watched Miller just absolutely shove against my team. I mean, he made Volpe, Soto, and Judge look like minor leaguers. He just absolutely dominated them. And, like you mentioned, he throws 100-mile-an-hour flames with ease. And not only that, obviously a lot of guys in Major League Baseball reach 100. That's just the way it is nowadays. However, a lot of these guys also will have command issues, and they'll throw wild pitches here and there. Miller's control is impeccable. Like he doesn't miss. He's always in and around the strike zone. He is not wild at all. He just throws it by. I mean, I think he struck out Soto on a pitch that was clocked at 103, if I'm not mistaken. You don't really see Soto overmatched that often, but he was overmatched by Miller. Miller just made him look terrible. And Judge, I think he went from like 100 miles an hour to Judge to like 87. A 13-mile-an-hour difference.
Yeah.
Miller definitely impressed me. I will say that. And the A's actually impressed me too. Like you mentioned, not many people, they are not the greatest team in baseball, but they're surely nowhere near as bad as they were last year. And honestly, even though I'm not an A's fan, I seriously hope they just put together a respectable season. That's really all you could ever ask. That's really all you can ask for. I hope they can at least finish around 500. If they're going to finish below 500, all right. But I hope it's like not embarrassingly below 500. Hopefully it would only be like a few games, like maybe 4 or 5 games under 500. If they can finish around that, I would consider that to be pretty respectable. But I mean, the A's right now are only 2 games under 500, and they're sitting pretty comfortably in the middle of the American League West right now. I mean, like I said, they have a losing record, but they got a comfortable lead over Anaheim and Houston, who are 4th and 5th. And they're only 2.5 back of Texas and Seattle. So, I mean, the A's, they're in the fight right now. So we'll see how long they can keep it up, or if they keep it up to begin with. But, yeah, that's how the American League West is shaping up. I'm just going to go around the league and just give everybody an update of what's going on around the league, seeing where teams are at. So as of the day of this recording, this is May 2nd, 2024. So as of the day of this recording, I mentioned the American League West. In our division, the American League East, the Orioles lead the charge by half a game. The Yankees are right behind them. The Orioles have a 19-11 record. The Yankees are at 20-12. The Red Sox are right behind at 18-13, a game and a half. Toronto in 4th at 15-17, and Tampa in last at 14-18. Like we mentioned, Tampa's been going through a rough stretch of baseball right now. They're 2-8 in their last 10. In the American League Central, which we touched on earlier, the top 4 teams in the division have winning records. Cleveland's at 20-10. Kansas City right behind them at 19-13. Tigers right on the Royals' heels at 18-13. Twins right on everybody's heels at 17-13. And then the dead White Sox are in last at 6-25, which is absolutely embarrassing and shameful. To the National League East, the Braves lead the charge at 20-9. They're just hitting on all cylinders. Phillies are right behind them at 21-11, half a game back. Nationals are at 500 at 15-15, as are the Mets. Mets have cooled off recently. Then there are the Marlins, who are at 8-24. That's pretty embarrassing. NL Central, Brewers are up by just half a game at 19-11 over the Cubs, who are 19-12. Reds are in third place, just one game over 500 at 16-15. Cardinals, fourth place at 14-17. Pirates and Nats at 14-18. And then the National League West, the Dodgers already have a 4.5 game lead over everybody because everybody else in the National League West stinks right now. Dodgers lead the charge at 20-13. Padres are in second at 16-18. Giants are at 14-17. The defending NL champion Diamondbacks, kind of a disappointing start for them, 14-18. And then there's the god-awful Rockies at 7-23 in dead last. So, yeah, that's how baseball's shaping up right now as we enter the second month of the season of this long marathon. Did you want to touch on any other teams? You want to talk about your Red Sox for just a few minutes?
Sure. I was kind of last week, I think I had the rant on the Red Sox. This week, I'm going to be a lot more positive. The Red Sox are 18-13, and obviously they're kind of like this last year, but man, I mean, obviously with the Bruins and the Celtics, I've been watching the Red Sox, but my focus hasn't really been on them as much as I used to, because obviously with the Bruins and Celtics, they're obviously going kind of through the peak part of their season in the playoffs. But I've been watching the background, of course, and Andrew Bailey has been just unreal. I mean, you see the way that the Giants had last year, their pitching staff, and their pitching this year has been kind of falling off a bit. But if the pitching, which I think was one thing that I think the Red Sox were hoping for this offseason, and obviously I'm still not going to let them get away with in terms of not spending, but guys have been stepping up. Tanner Houck obviously has been pitching great. Cutter Crawford's been pitching great. Even MLB Central the other day, Ryan, has been giving flowers to the Red Sox pitching, which I thought I would never see specifically on the network on the bingo card to start the season. So that pretty much says it all. And this past weekend, the Red Sox had a big weekend series against the Cubs. The Cubs have been playing really, really well. The Friday night game wasn't great. Shota Imanaga, who we haven't really talked much about on the show, but he's been one of the biggest stars so far in baseball. I mean, he absolutely shoved last night against the Mets at Citi Field. And not just him overall just pitching well, his overall personality. I don't know if you saw the quote yesterday about him pitching against the Mets, but it was something like with Spider-Man about like him being in a hotel in New York. He's just like, well, I feel like it's like Spider-Man or something. I'm like, this guy seems awesome. And if only the Red Sox could pay this guy, man. I mean, I think, your Yankees, the Red Sox, there'd be a lot of teams, the Mets, obviously, that would have loved this guy. Obviously, it sucked the way the Friday night game went. But then the Saturday game, the Red Sox had 17 runs. They came out and just absolutely clobbered them, which was great. But then the Sunday night game, it was a Sunday night game against the Cubs. Red Sox had a great outing again from Tanner Houck. They were up 3-0, I think, 4-0. I think it was 4-0. And the Cubs came back. It was 4-1. Chris Martin has kind of had a little bit of a underwhelming year compared to last year. He's still been okay. He had a really good outing yesterday. But he gave a 3-run homer to your old friend Michael Tauchman, the Sockman, as they call it. And I'm just like, oh, no, this can't happen. Like, this would be awful loss, awful ending to the weekend. But Red Sox, they came back, and Duran had a really good at-bat in bottom of the ninth. Devers, who's been really good lately. I don't know if it was just the rest, but his bat's been so much better. Even though he hasn't been really hitting the long ball, Devers has looked a lot better at the plate. He had a really good single, first and third, then Tyler O'Neill with that blue pit to win the game. And the Red Sox had a big one there to win the series. And then they played the Giants. The Giants have been playing, obviously they haven't been as great, but they don't play the Giants often. So they got some really good players in that lineup. Jun-Ho Lee, Chapman, Soler. They got some guys there. And to take the first two games here, I think has been great. Cutter Crawford was a good one. Cooper Criswell, Ron. Who would have thought Cooper Criswell has been kind of giving the Red Sox a little bit. So I don't know how long this will last for, but I'm gonna keep on celebrating until the fall off happens, because I know it's gonna happen at some point. But I just we talked about this off the air before the show. Outside the Yankees and the Orioles, to me, and the Red Sox only have faced the AL East once. Not crazy enough. They've only faced the Orioles once. That was it. every other time they have not faced the division. So I really can't get too high on them as of right now. But for them to be 18-13, essentially with all the injuries that they've had massive amount of injuries. They've had, Sheedenau's on the IL. They've had to bring guys in like Zach Short, who's been DFA. They brought in Dominic Smith to kind of just help, clear the need at first base. So they've had moving pieces left and right, and the Red Sox are 5 games over 500. If you told me specifically with all of this happening, I would have called this a success. So positive, Ben, on the Red Sox this week, Brian, I guess we can call it, to pretty much conclude the ending of our show.
I'm glad to hear. And way to give some love to Imanaga. We really haven't talked about him at all on this show, and he definitely deserves some recognition. Maybe next week we'll touch on him a little bit more. I definitely think we should. But, yeah, we definitely should have talked. We should talk about him more because he's been, phenomenal so far for the Cubs. So we'll see if he keeps it up this week. And, that's our show for this week. And tune into next week. And on behalf of Ben Kruse, I'm Ryan Touhey. Have a good one.